So it always takes a little bit for YouTube to start filtering through. So I'm just gonna go ahead and begin and turn my audio. Your work can feel off so that you're not listening to me in duplicate. So yeah, I'm Jen. I'm the owner of Exploit Diet Art by Science, and this is my first live stream that I've been able to do in 34 days, which is basically the entire month of March. I just didn't do anything. And so I wanted to do the live stream today to kind of talk a little bit about what I've been up to, like where I've been, and sort of some of the things I've been trying to do behind the scenes. So first off, I will be doing some spinning here in a bit, but I wanted to talk really briefly about what happened in my last live stream. So someone I went to high school with and did a lot of other events with through my early college days tragically died in a car accident. And it was really difficult for me to kind of get through that live stream because I had just found out about it. And then I did the live stream, and I think for me it really just, it created a whirlwind of emotions that I've been reeling from ever since. And that is also paired with the fact that I think I might have ADHD or maybe autism, but it's been enough to prompt me to actually see a GP about this, because looking at online guides and reading experiences from people who have these conditions, first of all, there's nothing to be afraid of, but I think it sort of helps me understand why I'm the way that I am. So, yeah, I've been kind of dealing with that. I also had a bunch of paperwork still to do for my visa, so I live in the UK, and in order to qualify for indefinite leave to remain, I need to have a visa that qualifies for that position, but a postgraduate study visa, which is what I was going to go for, doesn't give me that 5-year minimum, so I decided to go with a partner visa, which is different paperwork, and it also makes me give up certain amounts of my personal independence because now I'm tied to my partner and his job, and so it's been dealing with that. And then just the realities of living in a foreign country during what is essentially the last vestiges of a massive global pandemic, and there really aren't that many job options. And now that I'm actually eligible for more work, it doesn't make anything easier. It probably gives me some boost to my employability, but essentially I'm only working about 14 hours a week, which obviously is not enough to actually live on. And I have been just confronted with those very typical things that most students are familiar with, which is, how do you get by on very little income? And I've had to do this for much of my adult life because I've been a student for the vast majority of 20 years. But now I'm doing it in a foreign country. So I've been trying to do everything in my power to make what money we do have last as far as possible. And that has included dealing with a huge pile of clothing that has just completely worn out. And so we can't spend the money to buy new clothes, and so I've been sort of drawing on my sewing skills that I learned from my mom when I was little. I've kind of dabbled here and there over time. I've got a couple of upcycled bits on my channel, but if you want to see my past work, you can go back and look at those. But I've been just trying to get established, and it means that, like, I just barely get through the month. So with all of the things, it's been really difficult to focus on the particular issues related to textile craft. So, and actually you can see there's a big, it's not as big now. There's a smaller pile of clothes that I still need to fix. But my partner went from having, I think, 2 pairs of jeans to wear to work to now having 7 pairs. So that's actually quite a boon. I still need to work on mine because I had about 7 pairs and now I only have 2 that I could reasonably wear. I have 1 pair of jeans I wear to work and 1 pair of jeans that I wear besides. So, yeah, because I've been suffering from a lack of money, when I'm not working, which is mainly Fridays and Saturdays, then I am trying to find work. And whenever you're actively looking for a job, you also have to go through the soul-crushing defeat of rejection or being overlooked or just not even seen. So yeah, when I'm not working, I'm doing the whole application process, and whenever you're going for jobs that you're actually potentially quite qualified for, it takes an hour or 2 minimum just to get through the application process because you have to customize your CV, write a cover letter, address all of the things that they want to see in those places. So, that takes time. In some companies, they want you to have the application process all on their website, so all of the information is formatted in a specific way so they can very easily do a pre-select automated just to kind of weed out those that definitely aren't worth looking at, which I can appreciate, but at the same time it's just extra work. So I've been doing that, and then I've been trying to do meal planning and making our food budget last an entire month, and shifting money around so that my bills in the United States are covered, because believe it or not, despite the fact that I graduated with my undergrad in 2006, I'm still paying for it. So Expedite covers my student loans in the States, which is part of the reason why I do it, but because there have been a lot of issues with the pandemic and retail in general has taken a huge hit, it's kind of made certain elements of fiberworks business really unpredictable heading forward. So at the end of February, I got an email from Etsy basically telling all sellers that the fees are going to go up. Now, I realize that if you're not a seller, but maybe you use Etsy, these are the things you don't really pay attention to because you're considering it from the buyer's point of view, right? There's a lot for buyers. But for a seller, for example, I have to go through a lot of efforts just to be seen. So because I'm based in the UK and I ship from the UK, in order to be seen by US buyers, where a lot of you who know me from, obviously I'm an American, I have to include free shipping over $35 US in order to be seen in the US markets. So that means I have to increase the prices of all of my items just so that I can include shipping as part of that deal. And it's not fair for the UK buyers that they probably make up about 30 to 40% of my buyers, right? So there's that. And then if I want to be seen at all, I really pretty much have to always be running ads. When I'm not running ads, if I look at my analytics, it's abysmal. So if I can't be seen, then I'm not going to make sales. And if I don't include free shipping as an option, I'm definitely not going to be seen. So for a micro business that I am, I have to have these features turned on, which obviously increases my overall prices. And because every item I sell costs more, it's really difficult for me to squeeze anything out of my profit margin, because otherwise at the end of the day it's not even worth going through the effort because I'll be working for free. So this leads me to my plan. Starting tomorrow, April 11th is the first day that these new fees are going to be enacted. And I have, well, my partner's cousin who has a lovely shop. I think it's called 24 Dordogne Dragons, where she makes crocheted dragons out of beautiful yarns, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And she lives in the most beautiful part of France. She is going to boycott Etsy as a seller herself, and I can't agree more. It doesn't sound like much, but they're raising the rate for all transactions from 5% of the total sale to 6.5%. When I started, I think it was 2.7% or maybe 3%, but it was really, really low, and that was back in 2011. And for all the features that have been implemented, basically from 2011 till about 2015, have been very steady and gradual, and I've always done really, really well over the course of those 3 years. And then in 2015, there was a slight shift towards adding more features, but also increasing the prices, which kind of makes sense. But it started to get much, much worse in 2018, and obviously, essentially since then, it has become exceptionally more difficult, which is part of the reason why I switched to Squarespace. I'm not sponsored, but I have Squarespace hosting my website, actuallydied.com. So I'm basically curating my inventory in 2 locations, and at this point, Etsy is not really doing as much for me because it's making me raise my rates, and since I'm not able to buy in huge bulk, I can't get a big discount. And so I've been looking at other shops that sell similar types of items as me, and the ones that are more my scale, where maybe they're not, maybe they only have like 100 or 200 items, or maybe do a lot of handmade stuff like hand spun yarn or hand dyed yarn or wool. They're also struggling. The people that can buy in bulk, sort of like a craft shop equivalent, they will be able to absorb more because they have all of the extra special features that Etsy offers, like turning on the star seller feature. So you probably haven't heard of this unless you are on Etsy a lot. But essentially what that means is, because I don't make at least 10 sales a month and at least over a certain threshold of money each month, that star seller feature won't be turned on. And I won't be featured because, according to Etsy's algorithm, I'm not profitable for them to feature. So they're only going to feature the shops that tend to do well. And so it disproportionately favors those shops that have deep enough pockets to be able to fork over the money in advance so that they can boost all of their sales and then recuperate their initial investments. So if you start off very cheaply like I did, I only had $1,000 to start, which I earned from selling knives. All of that money has been invested in Actually Died 11 years ago, 12 years ago. So I'm at a crossroads. I've established myself through Etsy, and Etsy has been extremely generous to me over those foundational years. But now I can't continue working on the platform. So I'm going to be putting my shop in vacation mode starting tomorrow as part of the Etsy boycott. Don't know if it's going to get any attention. The CEO, Josh Silverman or whatever, isn't going to really care. But I may just leave it in vacation mode and see how things go on actuallydied.com. So if you want to help support me and the things that I do, including keeping my educational content free, that would be extremely helpful. I'm not alone. There are many, many businesses like me that are doing this either as a side hustle or they've done it full time in the past, but now they have to get an extra job because it's just not as sustainable as it used to be. So there's always room for more wool, there's always room for more silk, there's always room for more beautiful things that we create. And part of it comes down to having people out there who are interested, and that means telling your friend, hey, you don't know how to knit, I'll teach you how to knit, or you don't know how to crochet, I'll teach you how to crochet, or spin, or whatever. So we pretty much just need to keep going with that. And that kind of leads to the next point, which is Cyberlink Power Director is what I use for making all my videos. And I've been in the middle of creating the next Fiber Talk episode on Targi. But I had to put it on hold because I didn't realize that my annual subscription expired. And I can't afford the £100 it requires to renew my subscription. In the past, I've always used Cyberlink for all my videos, but now they charge an annual fee, so you actually don't get to own the software package like we have in the past. So I've not been able to make videos. So if I can't make more crafters through having open access to education, then I can't have people there, buying things from my shop and supporting the education through that way. So I've just downloaded DaVinci Resolve, and I'm hoping that it's sufficient for what I need. I'm not a big editor, but I want the videos to look nice and have decent transitions so it's not very jarring for you guys as the viewers. So just assembling all this stuff together and dealing with other issues, it's been very difficult for me to pull myself together and put content out, and make videos, and just stand here at my new workstation that I made a little while ago, so that I could create in one space instead of having to move stuff around between different rooms of my house. Because that's what I would rather be doing. I'd rather be spending my time working on that. So, if you've been wondering where I am or where I've been, that pretty much summarizes everything. I want to get back to doing everything, but sometimes stuff gets in the way and I don't have time to explain, and I don't want to let anyone down. So thank you to those individuals who have actually, out of the kindness of their hearts, messaged me to find out that I'm okay, and I am okay. I've just been drowning under a sea of all of the things I can't deal with. Yeah, so that's the reality of everything. It's also made me sort of reticent to work on this project. So for those of you who have been following my New Year's resolutions, I've been wanting to make a hand-spun sweater forever. And I haven't gotten enough yardage, and I thought I had enough yardage, so these are the other two skeins. But it wasn't enough, so I have to do some more. So this is almost the second finished bobbin, and then I'll have one more to do, but plying will be a lot easier. So let's take a look at some of the comments. I've been chatting a little bit long time, so it is a lot of work to list a lot of items, especially if you have to do any kind of editing as you go. Now, I do have a better lighting setup than I used to, but sometimes there still needs to be color correcting, because even though I do have a better setup with my lighting, sometimes it does give you a blue cast, and so I have to color correct so that when you buy something that's yellow, it actually looks yellow, because sometimes it looks a bit green. That's problematic. Yeah, I'm just so excited that it only took 3 days to get confirmation that my visa went through. Because I thought that with the UK accepting a lot of Ukrainian refugees that I wasn't going to hear anything until June. I thought everything was going to be delayed. But I think maybe they were processing applications very quickly for those that were easier to deal with. But I know there's a lot of people who are living apart from their husbands or wives in the UK, and they're living in the US, and their visas are being delayed quite a long time, probably on the order of a month or two. And it's really difficult being away from your loved ones like that. So I'm just hoping that the visa situation for them will resolve. I don't have to sell through Etsy. I only sell on actuallydied.com through Squarespace, which I have to pay for monthly. But the transaction fees for them are much more reasonable. And it also allows me to host my blog, and I can link all of my YouTube videos there. So I do want to develop the website further, but managing with Etsy has sort of taken a lot of that time away. So I got it initially set up, and I kind of go in and tinker around with it every once in a while just to get it to my liking. But it does take time, and sometimes Squarespace doesn't do exactly what you think it's going to do, and I don't know enough about HTML to just fix it myself. But we're getting there. Yeah, it's crazy. I never would have thought that I would be at this point thinking I might have ADHD, but the more I read about it and the more I review what it was like for me when I was a kid, I think because I was a girl growing up in the 80s, they don't think about that. Girls are going to have it because mostly it's boys and the hyperactivity, but I definitely think now this is part of the reason why I end up doing so much to the point of exhaustion all the time. So I know I posted this on my old blog a couple years ago, where I talked about what it was like getting all of my education squared away for my PhD, and it was a lot that I went through. I doubled up on science. I pushed myself by not having any study halls. I graduated early. I started college. I went to community college when I had just turned 17. And I did it as a Saturday class. I also worked 20 hours a week. So, that's really ambitious, but I also think the type of hyperactivity for girls is slightly different, and so I had oh no, sorry, I've got to move my phone over. Okay. So the clamp that I was using was depressing my power button. Didn't want it to restart in the middle of the stream. Yeah, so I talk a lot about my education journey, and I'm pretty sure that those are the perfectionism and imposter syndrome are definitely major hallmarks for me. Constantly being misunderstood by other people, and always thinking that I'm not good enough for anything is those are really the main ones that have given me pause. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I'm not bothered by labels. I'm more interested in understanding why I feel the way that I feel, and being able to talk to people who understand me. Because when you don't feel like you're really well understood, it's extremely frustrating, and that's, I think, one of the issues that I've had for the longest time. So I'm hoping, now that I don't have the PhD sort of weighing over me, I finally got that done March 7th. So I'm actually qualified now to graduate, so that's good. So it's given me perspective to kind of reflect on like why I felt the way that I felt. So back in 2018, this was before I did my relaunch of Explicitly Died, I sort of looked into training options, and I tried to do 40 hours of research each week, and I was also doing conferences. And I realized at the end of that year, I was working at least 40 research hours a week, and I went away to Denmark. I went to Copenhagen for the Center for Textile Research to do a summer workshop for 3 weeks. Well, it was 2 weeks, and I stayed on for a few more days so that I could have a holiday. I also gave, I think, 6 presentations on my research, and I started writing chapters for my PhD and posting up results. So it was quite an ambitious year, and I kept suffering from this horrific joint pain, and I couldn't understand why. And it got better in 2019 when I went from a minimum of 40 hours of research each week to more like 25 to 30. And I was still doing a lot of conferences, but I did feel better, but then it got worse during the pandemic, because then I still needed to finish writing the whole thesis, edit it, make sure it was all good before I could submit it. And all of that joint pain came rushing back to me. So I think one of the other things that can sometimes happen with people who have these disorders is they manifest stress differently. And for me, I've just been ignoring it until of late. And it wasn't until I started reading guides written by people who either work with adults who still have these conditions, or have the conditions themselves, and they're reflecting on their experiences, that the manifestation of stress can be quite different and often overlooked by people who suffer from those conditions. And so I think for me, I get really bad heart palpitations, like I have them now because I'm just stressed out over money still. And the horrible joint pain comes and goes. If I get really, really stressed out, like my whole body aches. And so despite the fact that I was pretty much done with my thesis, I was still suffering from the stress and anxiety of what do I do now? And so being able to reflect on this, I'm pretty sure that I've just lived my entire life overwhelming myself. And it's been reinforced by this notion of, well, if you get a better education, it'll pay off because you'll start off earning more money. And it's not a lie, but it's situational. And so really this last month has been me trying to understand more about ADHD and how to make certain accommodations for yourself, because I know I don't behave the way that most other people might. And so I've also been trying to just explore outside of the realm of wool and textile production in this form. So I've been trying to make a corset for Halloween for like the last 3 years, and I'm actually going to do it this year. So another really specific thing about people who have autism, they're extremely clumsy, and they can sometimes have difficulty holding on to small objects. And that sounds kind of crazy, and it is very, very specific, but if you know me, I am extremely clumsy despite the fact that growing up from the age of 2, I was a figure skater. So I skated until I was 16. And then when I decided I wanted to pursue more education and actually get a job so that I had some money and a car, I took up martial arts, Kuksul 1 in 2004 when I was 20 years old. And I'm a second degree black belt in Kuksul, and I've just actually restarted some lessons because a friend of mine is paying on my behalf until I can get a job to pay him back. So, because he wanted to do it, so he's like, well, let's just do it together and, we'll figure out the money later. So, I thought that was really nice. And so, you would think with all of this, exercise and emphasis on balance, I still run probably 1 or 2 times a week, and I still lift weights, so, it's not like there are issues with me biomechanically, but I still drop small stuff all the time, like the lid of a deodorant container or the lid of a chapstick or just any of those small kind of like cap-like things. I'm always dropping them. And my balance is always bad. I fall down the stairs probably once every 3 or 4 months. Which is not nice to hear. The worst fall that I took, it was January of 2020, and I think I now have scar tissue because every time I exercise, that part of my back just gets really, really stiff. So, you don't realize it until someone says, hey, by the way, you should read this. And it feels like a whole new world has opened up to me, and I'm like, yes, oh, this makes sense. Oh, yeah, I had to wear a heart monitor. So back before I started Expertly Died, I worked full-time for the state archaeologist. I was in charge of keeping track of all of the site surveys in Illinois and coordinating all of the surveys from, I think it was 4 other satellite offices, so everything had to be sent to me to curate, upload. And then we also had a master database of all of the sites that have been surveyed on large geographic maps in our office. So I had to keep track of all that stuff, and I occasionally helped them do post-excavation work whenever we went out to do site surveys for land development. And I was doing experiments for my museum studies master's in my spare time. So that involved working with a physicist researcher at the university that was nearby. And then I was also training for my second degree black belt test, and I was also teaching martial arts. So I co-owned the martial arts school for 5 years before I left to go to Korea in 2012. So every Monday and Wednesday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. I was there teaching people martial arts, and on Saturdays and Sundays from 2 to 4 p.m. I was doing that. So, it was a very busy time. And then because I was going to have to start paying back loans, and despite all of my efforts, I was still living at the poverty threshold. So I couldn't actually afford to pay for my student loans then, and I began selling knives instead. So I don't even remember how I managed to do it all, but the only social time I set aside for myself was 4 hours every Sunday. We would play Dungeons and Dragons. That was it. So I think wearing a heart monitor at that point just sort of told me something I already knew. I was very stressed out and needed to find a way to de-stress. But how do you de-stress when you're so strapped for money that you can barely make it through each month? You really can't. So, yeah, going through all that stuff again is not fun. But at least now I have a sense of why I might be going through it. So I think just having some information about the why is helping me with the coping process. Oh, thank you, Sonia. I still have a little bit of stress weight that I put on. So when I got back from Copenhagen, I did a lot of walking while I was there because I couldn't afford to take the subway to and from where I needed to be every day. So I just walked. It was like 1.5 miles one way. And then when I was doing my research at Winchester, because I was looking at stuff in the archives for my degree, whenever I was there, it was over 1 mile just to get to the location. I was always carrying like my laptop and a camera and a bunch of other things, plus my lunch. Uphill, because the south of England is really hilly, which is great for sheep. But I lost a lot of weight when I was doing more active research stuff, but pretty much during the pandemic I was sort of entrenched in my little spot on the couch with my laptop and the kitchen right next to me. I mean, I was still pretty active then. Up until the last 2 weeks before I actually submitted, I was running a 5K every day. But just all of the stress and anxiety, all those high levels of cortisol do nothing for you except put on weight. It's another reason why I'm really keen to get this stuff figured out, because I feel heavy and lethargic, and I don't like that. So I'm working on it. This has been very therapeutic. So anyone who's been watching this and are like, no, I don't want to hear anything about that, I understand. Ooh, oh gosh, Karen, that sounds awful. I've been really lucky with all of my joints, and despite all my clumsiness, I haven't really hurt myself too much. I've never had stitches, I've never knocked myself out, never broken a bone. When I have had injuries, I always do what I feel is the smart thing, and I take a significant period of time to recover. And when I'm feeling up to it, I sort of gradually get back into it. So when I fell down the stairs, it was, I think, like the 10th or something of January of 2020. I didn't do any exercise. I did some light stretching until the end of March. So I gave myself about 6 weeks to begin to recover from the fall, and then to begin building back that strength and flexibility in my lower back. And I had to start literally with we have free weights that have like the half pound or half kilo weight, so it's like, I don't know, 3 pounds or so. I had to start with just doing that with my arms because I couldn't do anything with my legs. I just had to sit in a chair, and my partner had to give me the weight because I couldn't pick it up, and just do exercises this way until I felt well enough to do the full body thing. Because unless you, have something like this happen to you, you don't realize just how much your muscles coordinate, especially across your back. So when you lift something with this arm, all of the core muscles, including the ones in your back, are also being flexed. So it took a while, but I think by the summer I was actually able to just go back to running and weightlifting on my own. But it took about 6 months just from falling down the stairs and landing a little bit rough. I still have an indentation from where I fell. So I think that's solidifying the point that I have scar tissue there. But my body is a story. Sonia, the thing about a capitalist society, it's always going to be the case that we're going to stress out about money. In smaller communities where people can really help each other, it's less of a stressor. But, I can't just send a basket load full of hand-spun yarn to pay my utilities for the month. Right? I mean, how many of us would de-stash to all of our utilities and regular, making regular payments to like rent or like student loans with wool? That would be great. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. But something that I've been doing lately, and this is in conjunction with me dealing with ADHD-ness. So I'm definitely a perfectionist, and I think I arrived this way by kind of being held in comparison to others as a standard of what I should be. So I went through a lot of this when I was younger, but essentially it was sort of like, oh, you should be as smart as so-and-so, or you should be as pretty as so-and-so, or you should be as funny, or whatever, well-behaved or well-mannered. And so it sort of put in my head this need to be perfect, and part of that perfection is, it's something that permeates everything that I do. So the room that I'm in right now gives me an incredible amount of stress because behind the camera, I do have everything organized, but I can see everything. And because I can see everything, my brain is like full activity. Oh, I need to do that and that and that and that and that. And so because I see it all, I'm like constantly needing to work on stuff. But I can't just do a little bit. I have to do everything completely, and it has to be perfect, and it has to be, all cleaned up and tidy. Because I get everything out, I have to put everything away because I can't stand the stress of clutter. And if I'm already surrounded by clutter, it doesn't help. And so I'm always just in this low-level anxiety over everything. And the other thing that makes it worse is, in order to hold myself to these standards that may not be even obtainable for me, I forget that I have needs, and so I restrict everything that I need or want to do things that I have to do. And sometimes it's not actually stuff I have to do, but I kind of do. So maybe if I explain this'll make sense. So dishes, right? You get done with dinner, you put all your dishes in the sink. We don't have dishwasher. I haven't had a dishwasher in 10 years. So those dishes don't get done until someone goes in there and actually does them. And since we have limited counter space, because we have a very small galley kitchen, the terrace house we live in was built in the 1890s, and so there were very different concepts of space. And so, you know, because we don't have a lot of space to put things out, we have to kind of wash in loads. And so sometimes when we do a whole bunch of dishes, there's still a bunch left that we still need to do, but we have to wait for the other ones to dry. And then it just becomes this ever persistent task. And for the longest time, I just couldn't stand the dishes not being done, and I would constantly do them. And when I was really in the thick of my PhD, I couldn't do the dishes, and so they were just piling up, and it would always stress me out. So I kind of would get into this frenzy of activity where I was just doing nonstop chores until I went to bed. And that's always the case with me, because it's like, I'll feel better if this is done. But if there's a lot to do, then it's never done, and you run out of time. And so I'm just constantly in a state of never doing anything for myself. And so as a way to kind of help me cope with that need to not be stressed about my financial situation, because there's not really a lot I can do about that. I'm doing all that I can, is to just be like a sim in like The Sims 4. Just have a whim. Just go and do something because you want to do something. So that's sort of what I've been doing over here with this corset. So this was supposed to be done in time for Halloween last year and did not happen. But it's an underbust corset, so I don't know if you can really see the shape super well. But it's the one that kind of like comes up in this part, and then it goes under the boob and then around the back. And I've hand stitched the 2 layers, and I'm going to have a 3rd layer on the inside, just because I feel like there's a lot to cinch in. And this is the other side. That side's completely done. So maybe you can kind of see that a little bit more. And this one actually fits my very long torso. But after doing a sufficient number of repairs, I was like, I know I'm doing this to save money, but I don't want to keep doing it because it's work. It's something I have to do. And so working on this corset in the last couple of weeks has been a totally whim-based project. I kind of had to let it sit for a while I finished up the thesis edits for my PhD so that I could start looking for work again. So when I'm working on that and I'm just listening to a D&D podcast, or I've been watching Chateau Diaries. I don't know if anyone of you watches that, but I really love the host of the show. And before, when I was living in South Korea, I did have a brief thought of purchasing a second property. Well, it would have been a first property, but because I had so much extra money living in South Korea, I thought, why not take this opportunity to invest in a property, rent it out as a B&B when I'm not there, and then I would have somewhere to go and stay while I'm in France. So yeah, I went through the whole process of looking at how much defunct chateaus cost and how much it would require in terms of getting them at least established well enough to be available as a B&B while I'm not there, so at least it's earning money. probably I'm not the only one who's had this sort of fantasy, but it was almost a reality because, um, the housing situation was all being paid for by the company I was working for, and it seemed like a viable option. But staying in Korea wasn't good for me, and it definitely wasn't good for my business. It helped with making videos because it gave me something fun to do. I could really engage with the audience more. But yeah, so just hand stitching. All it is, I'm just doing basic back stitches to seam up the corset. And so I've just been watching that, and it has been great. I feel like even on days when I know I have a lot to do, it feels like it gives me the strength that I need to get through the stuff that I have to get through. And because I'm making something that I could wear in the future, and teaching me valuable stitching skills so that I can kind of shift between sort of more couture type clothing, something that I've been wanting to get into for, gosh, the last 7 years. I got a brief taste of it when I was in between living in Korea and then in the UK. I was in the States for about 3 months. So I made a couple of things. I did some upcycling. I made a pair of jeans. I learned how to draft patterns. I learned how to do draping. So I'd love to do all that stuff again. And all of these hand stitch skills are really useful if you want to have like real customization of your wardrobe. And since many of my clothes are either charity shop finds, like this shirt was a charity shop find. I think I probably paid about £1 for it. Or it's just stuff that I've curated over the last, I don't know, 15 years. I definitely have shirts that I wore when I was an undergraduate, which must be between 2004 and 2006. Yeah. So, that's what I've discovered so far on how to not feel so stressed about being poor. Oh, yeah, another thing about being in the UK, whatever I earn here isn't going to be garnered because it's not going to be garnered by the US because I need that money to live on here, and I don't meet the minimum threshold for my income here to be taxed by the US as well. So that's actually put me in a really good position for paying back my student loans. So, small relief like that is also huge. I don't know what I would do if I had to go back to the States right now, because I'd obviously be living with my mother, which isn't a bad thing, but you don't want to be 37 years old living with mom. Especially since I've been more or less on my own since 20, and I've been paying for a lot of the things myself since the age of 16. Oh. You're talking about Jennifer Connelly in The Labyrinth. That's a great movie. I watched it when I was, 12? 11 or 12. And it made me an instant David Bowie fan, because I loved the metal bands of the 80s. And when I got older and I was, driving around in my car with the windows down, blasting radio music. Oh man. And David Bowie in tights. Oh man. I do watch that movie probably once every couple of years just because I love it so much. Yeah, so I don't know if it's going to take me a while to actually finish this corset, not because of the stitching, it's all the other stuff that you need. So in advance of this Etsy strike, I thought, well, I'll see how much it costs to get all of the steel boning I'd need and the boning channels. Plus, I need a busk for the front because the one that I made a few years ago, it was my first test run. I didn't do any fitting, I just kind of made it to wear as a costume and also to kind of get a sense of how they're put together. So I didn't have any boning in that one. I used like the bra hooks for the front, and then I got a ribbon and I laced up the back. So it kind of fits me more like a waspy or like a belt. But I wanted to do something proper, so I need a busk, I need boning channels, I need steel boning because I don't want to buy more plastic. And besides, with the steel boning, I can keep using it. I'd have to buy it by the roll, which is like 30, it's about 30 pounds, and then all the caps that you have to use to kind of keep the ends from tearing at the fabric and my skin. Getting new eyelets because I ran out for my other corset, and the grand total for that is like another 50 pounds just to finish this corset. And so it's like it was 44 pounds just to get the fabric. So I got this brown fabric. It's just plain woven cotton. My partner wanted me to make him a wizard costume because that was his D&D character a few years ago. So I taught him how to sew. I drafted a pattern to fit him, and then I sewed it up, or I got everything ready, and then he cut out the fabric and he sewed everything if I pinned it for him. But then there was still a lot of it left over, which was literally just enough to make the 2 brown panels for this corset. I think there was like this much fabric that was saved afterwards. And then I got this beautiful red linen fabric. It was, I think it was 11 pounds per meter, and I got 2 meters of this, just in case I messed it up horribly and had to do it again. Because sometimes you don't know what it's going to be like if you're not using the same weight fabric. So even though the mock-up that I made out of plain white, it may or may not fit right when I do it in linen. So this is a heavier fabric, and the weave structure is actually a little bit different. And it's difficult to see, but there's actually a little bit of variation in the yarn, so it gives us a wonderful texture and sheen. So in case it doesn't fit, I had some extra. And then I bought, obviously, I bought all the thread for it, and I also got some yellow. It's kind of like the Fat Tuesday colors minus the green, so it's like the beautiful gold and beautiful burgundy combination. So it's going to be the burgundy corset outside with this beautiful yellow trim that goes all the way around the top and the bottom. And I was going to get a black busk with black eyelets to lace it all up, because I don't want to look like Mardi Gras colors, but I wanted something that was eye-popping. But yeah, just to make this corset alone is going to cost probably about 100 pounds. Although I can use the extra fabric for future corsets if I want. Because there are some other styles I want to try. And obviously the steel boning, there will be plenty for at least another corset or two after I use what I need for this one. But still, not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. I could do stitch eyelets, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. So when I did my original corset, I just used the metal grommets, the little eyelets. But I did that because I literally finished it, I think, 45 minutes before our Halloween party. Cutting it close. It takes anyone at least an hour to get ready for a Halloween party. If you're wearing a costume, that is. So despite the fact that I've been yammering on for a while, I'm still keeping this pretty consistent. I haven't been doing as many checks as I normally should. And I think this is probably, so I'm going to go these little ribs down here. And I think that will be sufficient for the second bobbin. And then I'll be able to move on to the third bobbin. And then it'll be done. I'm also still working on the supported spindle yarn that I talked about in the last live stream. Because I know some of you don't have space for a spinning wheel, and some of you might not be able to reasonably afford one. So there's a long history of people making clothing with hand spindles. So I think it would make sense to have a hand spun sweater made from wheel spun yarn as well as spindle spun yarn. So I haven't made as much progress on that yarn, but I have spun a little bit, so we're making progress on that. So the crafting New Year's resolutions are still underway. I'm glad that you enjoyed this hour. I actually had to shift it forward about an hour because I was doing 5 p.m. London time, but by the time I actually finished the live stream and got everything picked up so that I could sit down to eat, it was already almost 7 p.m., which is kind of late. So I figure if we do it a little earlier, no one's really going to mind. And with the hour change, we're now still consistent with the US. So the UK has a different hour change for daylight savings than the US, but we're all back up to like the normal time difference now. So, what other projects are you guys working on? So, Sonia is making a scarf with her spindle. Oh, I forgot to show you, the last time I was also, I was working on a very simple knitted triangular shawl because I just wanted something that was like really big and really warm. Let me grab that real quick. Do I need to turn on the light? Can you guys see everything okay? Hi, Chris. So this is what I've finished. It kind of looks a little bit gray, but if I bring it up to you to see, maybe you can make out that it's more green. Yeah. So if you remember, I think in February I posted to the blog that you can actually get quite a lot of nice variations in dyeing. So what I did was I had 4 skeins in that dye bath, and I had 1 of merino and silk, and then I had 3 of this is just a merino single. I wanted something really fluffy to make, so I thought, well, of all the yarn that I bought in bulk a couple years ago, I haven't had any for myself, so I thought, these are the last couple of skeins. I'm going to dye something, put it on the blog, and then knit something for myself with it. Like in full scale, not just samples. So for the merino silk and 1 skein of this, I kept the colors more individuated so that they would have greater transitions. And then for the other 2 skeins of this, I muddled the colors more, so I shifted the dyes more as it was setting. And because of that, even within the same dye bath, you could actually get variations. So if I ever wanted to make a bigger project, but I wanted to like combine all of those yarns together into a project, I could. Or if I just manipulated the dye a bit more, I could sort of get a stronger distinction in color, or I could get a more muted effect. So because I like to have at least 1 to 2 projects that I complete each year for myself. This was project number 1, so I've done that. Yeah, so I can't actually remember how far along I was when I showed this last time, but I finished it and I never washed it. I just started wearing it. When it gets dirty enough, I'll wash it. I'll consider that the setting. Oh, where was I when I was doing the minstrel assembly video? I was either living in Chicago or Korea, but I think it was in Chicago. If it was, if it's the one where I'm on a white floor, then it was Chicago. Oh yeah, it was, because I was disassembling my wheels so that I could pack it all up for storage. So that video was me basically, I think it was like the week before I left to come here. I had to take everything apart, clean it all off, and then put it into storage for, let's see here, 5 years. It was in storage from 2015 until 2020. It was a very long time to be away from the wheel. Well, this wheel. Oh, I would love to weave curtains. So in our house, we have 6 windows. Exactly 6. We have wooden blinds in here and sort of like privacy contact paper over the bottom part of the window because it's right next to the sidewalk. So we don't have any like front yard or anything. In the room behind me, the middle room, we have a window with no window decorations whatsoever. Then we have one in the kitchen, which again has blinds, but they're all the way at the top. We've never used. And then we have our bedroom window, which has like cotton. It's basically just a plain woven cotton curtain. I ended up having to wash it because it was starting to just get black after our cats. They have dark colored coats, so when we got our tuxedo, she's black and white. She loves that window. It's her favorite place in the whole world. But because she's got all that dark colored hair, it accumulates on the white. So I decided to wash it, and it wasn't pre-shrunk. So now it's got like this much of a gap, so sunlight just comes in all the time. And then our the second bedroom that we have upstairs, that's actually where it's like the exercise room. Basically, I've got the treadmill up there and we've got our weight set. We have blinds up there that we never use. And then we have our bathroom, which doesn't need one because it's got a privacy window. But even though we don't really need furnishings on our window, I still want to weave something for them. I don't know why. I've always wanted to get into embroidery. I started doing stuff with embroidery when I think I was about 11 or 12. And I forget what spurred me on. I think I watched a lot of crafting channel stuff at that age. And so my mom broke in. She said, all right, I'll let you try it out. She was dubious that I would actually stick with it. She was right. It's really hard. I just didn't have enough patience and dexterity when I was a kid, so I couldn't do it. I could probably do it now, but I don't know if I would really enjoy just doing like satin flowers. So it would have to be either something that was period specific or something that was more artistic. So like some kind of pattern that I would really enjoy embroidering, like a dragon. I'm sure someone has a pattern out there. I didn't actually meet any spinners or weavers in Korea because they don't really do that stuff there so much. I mean, they do, of course. Oh no.